I thought we were building the future, he told me, eyes fixed on the empty surface of his coffee. Some days it felt like we actually were. Other days it felt like we were taping the wings back onto a plane while it was already airborne. We'll call him Evan. That's not his real name. He joined Carvana in the rush, young, ambitious, the kind of operator who could juggle 5 dashboards and 3 chat windows while answering a manager on the floor. When he started, the pitch was intoxicating. Take the worst parts of buying a car, haggling, waiting, paperwork, and vaporize them with code. Build a slick online store, throw in a glowing vending tower, and ship vehicles to doorsteps like sneakers. At first, the rhythm felt exhilarating. Cars clicked sold while he was still reading the VIN. A transporter would get assigned before the e-signature dried. Customer success pinged him with emojis every time a 5-star review landed. The message from leadership never changed. Move faster, scale bigger, trust the model. Then the seam started whispering. A title would go missing and the queue would clog. A lien holder wouldn't clear and the clocks on compliance would start blinking red. A car delivered on Monday returned on Thursday with a "this isn't what I was promised" attached. Those whispers turned into noise. The noise became a constant hiss that no one could tune out. One afternoon, a regional director dropped into Evan's team channel with a pep talk that wasn't a pep talk. "We acknowledge the pain," it read. "Remember, we're disrupting an industry, not processing a form." That line hung in the air like exhaust. You can disrupt an industry, he thought. You still have to process the form. He remembers a week when a flood of lease returns and repos marched in like a second shift. The storage yards were swelling. Transporters parked fenders to bumpers because the lanes had no more room. Titles were scanned. Some vanished into a software maze that didn't always spit them back out. Customers kept clicking by. What cracked him wasn't a headline or a lawsuit. It was a single mother in the queue, Olivia from Tucson, who'd been waiting 4 months for a registration that never came. Her voice wasn't angry. It was quiet. "I can't risk another ticket," she said. "They told me the plate was on the way. It never is." Evan promised to look into it, opened 3 tickets, and felt the same leaden dread he'd felt too often. The numbers on Evan's screen still screamed growth. That was the paradox. When the market crowned Carvana with a valuation loftier than household name automakers, the celebration inside was real. But in the trenches, growth had a different meaning. Overtime, backlog, apologies. He didn't quit because he hated the mission. He quit because the mission didn't match the math. And when the math finally caught up, $79 billion of belief evaporated like mist on hot pavement. But don't click away, because once you see how the story was sold, you'll recognize the lie and the shine. To Wall Street, Carvana wasn't a car dealer. It was a tech rocket with a steering wheel, a frictionless platform that would do to auto retail what streaming did to CDs. The narrative sang low touch, high scale, nationwide logistics, data-driven pricing, and a brand that turned a vending tower into a selfie magnet. The chart obeyed. The stock roared upward. In the frenzy summers, Carvana's market cap flirted with the unimaginable, briefly towering over brands that had been building trucks since your grandparents' were young. Analysts repeated the refrain, "You're not buying cars, you're buying a model." But models live or die on their friction points, not their pitch decks. Inside the machinery, the old enemies never left. Titles, liens, inspections, transport timings, state rules written in stone, and customers with schedules that don't bend. The promise said software would sand down the sharp edges. Software helped until it didn't. Customers like Noah in Charlotte clicked purchase, got a delivery window, and met a cheerful driver with a clipboard and a smile. The thrill of a doorstep delivery felt real until the first DMV deadline slipped, until a promise plate was in process. Until in process became a voicemail loop. A different kind of gravity started pulling at the numbers. Inventory carrying costs, transport fuel, reconditioning parts, warranty claims, capital that liked cheap interest and panicked when rates rose. "We were told we'd outrun the old math," Evan said. "I watched the old math catch us by the collar." The miracle had a blind spot. Growth wasn't free, it was financed. And financing is a clock that never stops ticking, and the clock was about to get loud. Titles are boring until they aren't. A title is a promise that says who owns a car and who still needs to be paid. In the old world, a title clerk at a dealership kept folders, ticked boxes, and walked papers to a window. In the new world, a title lived inside a system, zipped across screens, and sometimes fell into a digital crack you couldn't see. "We weren't evil," Evan said. "We were overloaded." Overloaded systems behave like people under stress. They miss peaks, they drop details, they forget to breathe. When backlog builds behind backlog, you start triaging speed over certainty. That worked until state lines pushed back. Regulators in several states began tapping the brakes. Licensing hearings turned into red letter days. The company insisted it could fix the flow. Employees like Priya, a process engineer Evan admired, worked nights diagramming bottlenecks, mapping where titles went to die. She patched what she could. The river stayed high. Customers didn't care about swim lanes and dashboards. They cared about the cop who pulled them over for expired temp tags. They cared about the tow truck that took away a car they'd been paying for because a lender from 3 owners ago was still coded as outstanding. Try explaining that to someone who needs the morning commute to feed 2 kids. Meanwhile, the returns queue swelled with vehicles that didn't match their online glow. Devin in Fresno clicked on a sporty coupe that looked immaculate on the carousel. Under the driveway sun, paint mismatches whispered a different story, and the minor accident tag he'd skimmed over felt like a punchline. The 7-day return policy sounded generous, until scheduling a pickup meant another week of missed shifts and borrowed rides. At scale, 1% of anything becomes a storm, Evan said. 1% of tens of thousands is a stadium of people with a problem. And when the stadium starts shouting, even the prettiest brand voice cracks. Carvana's rise depended on 3 miracles operating in sync: cheap capital, eager investors, and a consumer willing to accept a screen over a handshake. For a moment, the universe obliged. Money cost almost nothing. Risk felt like a memory. Patience came easily to people who'd been told disruption was a virtue unto itself. Then interest rates rose like a drawbridge. The cost of borrowing doubled, then tripled. Every car sitting on asphalt began burning money like a space heater in winter. The inventory that once looked like choice now looked like liability. Transport schedules got tighter. Reconditioning got pricier. The "We'll Make It Up on Volume" song found its final verse. Dealers on the ground, real steel roofs, grease under fingernails, felt the distortion first. Lance, who runs a family lot outside Tulsa, watched Carvana sell vehicles near or below what he would pay at auction. "You can't fight a bonfire of dollars," he said flatly. "We just tried to outlast it." He warned customers, low isn't always honest. Some listened, many didn't. The ads were too clean. The towers were too shiny. When the tide retreated, a lot of inventory had no place to go. Auction lanes filled with units nobody wanted to touch without deep discounts and deeper disclosures. Lance returned to the lanes ready to buy. He found bargains he'd never thought he'd see. "Cheap," he said, "isn't the same as good." And there was a different chill in the air. Lenders pulling credit like a bar yanking last call. Financing windows narrowed. Subprime dried up. Even prime buyers heard the word no more often. The machine wasn't just sputtering, it was starving. The miracle turned back into math. And the math said the story had to change. Tessa in Dayton had never bought a car alone before. Her ex used to handle the paperwork. She liked the idea of avoiding a showroom. No pressure, no sales patter. The website felt safe. She picked a compact SUV for school runs and grocery trips, clicked through a stack of digital pages she barely understood, and waited for the transporter. Delivery day felt like a birthday. A bow on the mirror, a courier who cracked a joke, the smell that wasn't new but pretended well. 3 weeks in, the check engine light began flashing a rhythm that didn't sound like music. The local shop pulled a code. Emissions faults, a catalytic converter that wasn't original, and a surprise. Bodywork overspray where a minor bumper had clearly meant rear quarter repair. Tessa reached out within the return window. The hold time stretched. The reassurances multiplied. The pickup took days to schedule. Meanwhile, she missed 3 shifts and burned through favors by borrowing a ride. When the car finally left her driveway, the feeling wasn't relief. It was a hollow ache you get after a scam that promises trust. "I'm not mad at the idea," she said. "I'm mad at feeling like the idea mattered more than me." Deshaun in Phoenix was more blunt. He runs a small mobile detailing business and needed a work truck yesterday. He found one online that looked clean, with miles that suggested someone who drove to the office and home, not a rig that lived a hard life. The delivery guy was friendly, the bedliner looked new, and the engine sounded right. 2 months later, Deshaun discovered why the miles were low. The truck had been sitting hard after a flood he didn't know to check for. The title, when it finally arrived, told the truth the listing didn't spell out. "I wasn't just out the truck," he said. "I was out clients who thought I'd flaked." Evelyn in Boise runs numbers for a living. She read every line of the contract, screenshotted every promise, and kept a spreadsheet on service dates. When the temporary plate expired, she started pinging support preemptively. "All good," they said. Weeks later, a patrol car pulled her over and the ticket landed anyway. She appealed. She provided emails. She waited. "It's the helplessness," she said, "not the mistake." The feeling you've been erased by a system that only talks when it wants to sell you something. The names change, but the pattern rhymes. And in between these stories, Brooks, a transport driver contracted for overflow, kept his own ledger. I delivered joy at the door, he said, and sometimes picked up the same car with a frown a week later. He doesn't hate the concept. He hates seeing people caught between a billboard and a reality that can't keep up. This is where the scandal lives, not just in charges and charts, but in the distance between the promise and the day-to-day. If you want to know what a company is really worth, don't ask a press release, ask an auctioneer. On Wednesdays in a cavernous hall outside Dallas, Nolan, a dealer who has sworn off hype, walks the lanes with a notebook he's carried since the first time he bought a car with his own money. He taps fenders, peers under panels, and checks for the glint of a floodline inside door sills. The chant begins. A late-model compact flies past, a familiar online brand still clinging to a windshield sticker. The run list whispers, title delay cleared. The crowd shrugs. Bids stay shy. The hammer falls thousands below last year's number. It's not just them, he admits. Everyone's inventory got weird during the boom. But the gap between how it's sold and how it shows up, that's where money goes to die. Reconditioning costs climbed while certain used vehicles flooded the lanes. Detailers raised rates, parts back-ordered, techs hard to hire. Nolan's pen told the same story every week. The spread wasn't wide enough, the risk too thick, the buyer appetite thinner than it looked on paper. That's what panic looks like. Not screaming, but silence. A room full of people who used to fight over a car with clean history, now letting it roll by because too many burned fingers still sting. The market's verdict isn't emotional. It's arithmetic with a long memory. And the memory is getting longer. For a while, the street crowned a new king every quarter. Disruption paid better than diligence. A company that could tell a story got a halo you couldn't buy with equipment alone. Carvana looked like the perfect crossover. A marketplace with logistics sauce poured over it and a brand with a viral gimmick. Analysts compared it to platforms that scale by catching fire. Charts went vertical. Think Pieces asked if traditional dealers were dinosaurs. Everyone forgot that dinosaurs ruled for millions of years, while most startups barely get 3. When the Fed shut the window on free money, the pitch deck turned back into a balance sheet. The same analysts who championed the rocket began publishing notes with phrases like path to sustainability and liquidity risk. The stock didn't drift down. It fell like a dropped wrench, hit the concrete, and bounced sideways. Investors like Harlan, who manages a fund known for kissing anything labeled tech, confessed quietly to his peers that he'd believed too much. We remembered to look at growth, he said. We forgot to check the fuel. Others didn't regret the ride. They regretted the passengers they'd brought along. Retail traders who'd fallen in love with the tower selfies and the ad voice. People with smaller nest eggs who didn't mind risk until risk didn't mind them. The market always teaches the same lesson. It just changes the names. It's easy to make regulators the villain. It's harder to admit when the rules exist, because someone once got hurt. In a handful of states, licensing agencies finally said no more after too many complaints landed on too many desks. Temporary tags that expired in limbo, liens not retired in time, paperwork that didn't match plates. Hearings were scheduled, permits were paused, remediation plans were inked. Some bans were lifted after promises, some stuck around longer than any brand wants to explain in a 30-second spot. Inside the company, compliant minds like Priya tried to architect a fix. New checkpoints, tighter audits, dashboards that turned crimson before the damage spread. We kept asking for headcount and time, she said. We got slogans. Meanwhile, call centers absorbed the blast. Kayla, who transferred from hospitality for better hours, spent evenings with a headset glued to her world. People weren't monsters, she said. They were tired. They were scared. I learned to let them yell. When layoffs came, she got a calendar invite, a smiling thank you, and a login that stopped working by lunchtime. Those towers that lit up the skyline at sunset, they made great B-roll when investors visited. They didn't process a single title. Spectacle doesn't file Form 262. Billboards don't sit at the DMV with a number in hand. When the lie's loud, the truth gets quieter. The truth is a clerk with a stack of files, a dealer who knows every notary by name, a customer who can't risk a ticket because rent is due on Friday. That's not sexy. It's survival. Remember Lance in Tulsa? He's still here. Lots of dealers like him are. They look unassuming on the outside. A wooden desk with a squeaky chair, a coffee maker that's older than the receptionist, a bulletin board with Polaroids of customers holding keys. Inside, they run on something simple. Don't promise what you can't deliver. Don't deliver what you can't register. During the Carvana surge, Lance lost deals to prices he couldn't match without lighting money on fire. He tightened up, kept his shop lean, matched people to vehicles that made sense, and said no to buyers chasing unicorns. "I'm not jealous," he said. "I'm allergic to math that doesn't come out even." When the unwinding began, he started seeing more trade-ins from online returns. Buyers bruised by a frictionless purchase that got very friction-full. He didn't gloat, he documented. He showed them where repairs lived underneath the photo gloss. He taught them how to read a title history like a diary. Carmen, who runs a suburban store outside Raleigh, watched the same phenomenon. She built a corner of her website called Know Your Paperwork and shot lo-fi videos from behind her desk, explaining how tags, titles, liens, and inspections actually work. Her views exploded. So did her inbound calls. "People don't want magic," she said. "They want someone to answer the phone." The dealers the internet tried to erase are still here because they never traded the boring work for a brand trick. The irony is almost funny. The future rewarded the past. There's a financial statement somewhere that will tally the write-downs, the impairments, the lost market cap, the restructuring charges, the settlements. It won't tally the missed shifts, the strained marriages, the customers who cut their insurance to afford an unexpected repair, the employees who left a layoff Zoom and stared at a blank wall for an hour. Mateo, a former recon technician, misses the cars. He doesn't miss the speed. "We were measured by throughput," he said. "Quality was a slide on a deck. It wasn't always a moment in the bay." He knows good cars got to good homes. He knows some didn't. That knowledge sits heavy. Lila, who handled a Western region's logistics, can still draw the map from memory. "I know the best truck stop in every state line," she laughs sadly. She also remembers the night she rerouted 6 deliveries because a weather system stalled, a driver timed out of hours, and a customer who'd taken off work couldn't absorb a second delay without losing pay. "You can love a mission," she said. "You can also tell when a mission stopped loving its people." Stories like these don't get quarter-over-quarter charts. They get forgotten, or they get told. So the next bright idea remembers to respect the boring parts that keep the bright idea real. Does online car buying die because one company bled out? No. Digital isn't going anywhere. Customers love convenience. They love transparent pricing tools and soft pull credit calculators. They love scheduling a test drive from a couch and getting a fair number for a trade without battleground tactics. What changes is the worship of scale without substance. What changes is the tolerance for, "we'll fix it later." What changes is the willingness to let marketing write checks that operations can't cash. Avery, a compliance consultant who now helps mid-sized dealer groups modernize, sees the hybrid model winning. Online for exploration and paperwork, in person for the physical handoff, and the boring, crucial paper. "The revolution wasn't wrong," he said. "It was rushed." Lenders are rewriting their appetite too. Underwriting that once waved through a spectrum now looks for proof. Real income, real down payments, real trade equity. That means smaller markets, fewer approvals, and vehicles priced to match a world where money costs something again. It means fewer towers and more processes people can explain to their grandmothers. If that sounds less exciting, good. Excitement created this mess. Boring will fix it. You're not a regulator or a fund manager. You're a driver who needs a car that won't wreck your month. Here's what lives after the scandal. Practical truths you can carry. If a listing looks perfect, assume it isn't. Ask for a high-resolution walk-around video with the camera slow over panel gaps, under the rocker panels, along the tire date codes, and inside the trunk seams where flood lines love to hide. Ask for the full title path in writing. Who held it last? Who holds it now? And when will it be in your hand? If a return policy sounds generous, test it. Ask how long pickups take. Ask who pays for the second inspection if the first one missed something. Ask what happens if your temporary plate expires before a permanent one appears. Every honest seller will respect those questions. Every dishonest one will try to change the subject. If the price seems impossible, trace the missing cost. Transport, recon, a rebuilt history that photographs can't confess, a lien that someone hopes won't surface until you've already parked it in your driveway. And if you choose to buy online, and many will, build in a stop at a real shop with a lift within 24 hours of delivery. A mechanic with clean hands and a dirty shirt will tell you more truth in 15 minutes than a carousel of thumbnails can in 15 pages. None of this is romantic. It's how you protect your paycheck from someone else's dream. Evan sometimes drives by a glass tower on the outskirts of town. The kind that made Carvana look like the future to 1 million viewers in a 30-second ad. At night, the lights still burn. The cars inside look like candy in a machine you could feed with a giant coin. He pulls over and watches for a minute, engine idling. He doesn't hate what he tried to build. He hates that ambition forgot its obligation to the people who trusted it. He texts Priya now and then to ask how she's doing. They joke about starting a boring company that makes boring software for boring titling work that saves 30 families a week from a fine, a tow, a panic. No towers, she texts, just results. He smiles at the screen, drops the shifter into drive, and rolls back into the stream of headlights. Somewhere behind the glass, a car sparkles like a promise. Out here on the road, promises are tested 1 mile at a time. And that's the truth the lie couldn't defeat. $79 billion isn't just an accounting entry, it's belief burned. It's neighborhoods that watched a hiring wave turn into a layoff list. It's families who learned the hard way that convenience without competence is just a quieter kind of risk. But this isn't an obituary for online car buying. It's a warning label for anyone who tries to sell a shortcut where a process belongs. The next company will pitch a cleaner app, a faster checkout, a cleverer story. Don't be cynical, be precise. Ask where the paper lives. Ask who will pick up the phone. Ask how they handle the part that isn't fun. The old way wasn't saintly, it was just visible. The new way doesn't have to be invisible to be good. When a tower glows against the night sky, it's easy to forget that cars don't live in glass. They live in driveways, on job sites, at school pickup lanes, in the exact moments when a promise either holds or breaks. In those moments, branding can't help you. Only process can. Remember that the next time a commercial tells you the rules don't apply, the rules always apply. That's why we call them rules. If this pulled back a curtain you've been staring at for months, don't just move on to the next video. Subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter as this market resets in real time. Comment with your story, whether you bought online and loved it, struggled through a title nightmare, or work behind a desk where the paperwork actually gets done. Your experience is the heartbeat of this channel, and your honesty pressures the industry more than any ad campaign. Share this with someone who's shopping right now, not to scare them, to arm them. Because a smart buyer changes the market faster than any CEO speech. I'll keep digging, talking to insiders like Evan and Priya, dealers like Lance and Carmen, drivers like Tessa and Deshaun and Evelyn, people who live in the truth instead of the pitch. Together, we can make sure the next big promise comes with the boring receipts that make it real. The tower was never the future. You are the buyer who won't be dazzled into debt, the worker who won't be told that speed is a strategy, the neighbor who shares the lesson so fewer people get burned. See you in the comments. We've got work to do.